grappled with sort of trying to get myself into shape, or at least try and eat well. And there's so many different ideas out there. If you're anything like myself, I've sort of seen so many different ideas and sort of conflicting views about what we should eat, how we should eat, and so on and so forth. But we're going to speak to a really interesting guest who's going to give us the rundown, and we're going to speak to someone who's had their own lived experience in terms of some suggestions, some ideas around weight loss and why it can be a struggle to keep it off. So Professor James Stubbs and Lexy Ellis, welcome to the show. Great to have you on board.
Thank you.
It's great to speak to you. I mean, is it sort of fair to say, Professor, that there's so much information out there these days, it can be overwhelming?
Absolutely. There is so much information, and people are kind of spoiled for choice, but the choices they make really should be evidence-based. This survey shows that more than half of UK adults say they followed a fad diet, and to me a fad diet is something that's not supported by evidence, or on the basis of what we know sounds too good to be true. In other words, it's not likely to work. And we also know that nearly half the adult population try and lose weight at least once a year, and surveys and studies that we have done previously across Europe suggest that most people don't follow evidence-based approaches. They follow what you might call a fad diet, but that people who use evidence-based approaches are more successful than people who are not.
Yeah, no, absolutely. It sort of makes sense, and I suppose it can be sort of convincing, like for people. Obviously, it's a bit of a minefield, and sometimes you get like contradictory suggestions too, where especially the days of social media now, there's so much information really, and it can be overwhelming to say the least. But in terms of yourself, Lexy, what's your sort of experience yourself? I mean, it's always great to sort of hear someone's lived experience, sort of, what sort of led you down the path you went down?
I absolutely agree with what Professor was saying. I spent my life yo-yo dieting is what I would call it. I wanted to feel fit and healthy, but very much have an emotional connection to food. I don't just eat when I'm hungry. I like to eat in front of the TV. I like to eat when I'm bored. I like to eat, I like comfort food. So every fad diet, if you like, that I tried was very restrictive and included me having to give up most of the foods I loved, which just wasn't sustainable. I could do it for maybe 5 or 6 days, 7 days, and then on the back of that, I would have missed that, and then I tended to overeat and get into quite an unhealthy cycle. And this went on for years and years. I was trying to lose weight, but just running alone on motivation, trying to do it myself in the house, not really telling anyone, or seeing a picture of somebody's before and after picture because they followed some crazy diet. I remember the craziest one I did was cabbage soup, and all I was allowed to eat for a week was cabbage soup, and I did lose about half a stone in a week, but then of course as soon as I started to eat normally again, it went straight back on. So yeah, I would agree. I think there's a lot of information out there that is, that does encourage the yo-yo dieting. I joined Slimming World in 2016, and I'll be very honest, I didn't think it would be much different, and I couldn't have been more wrong. It was incredibly different. I lost 7 stone just over 18 months, and I've kept it off ever since. And when you look back now, I don't care how long it took. I've got it off, and I've kept it off, and it's changed my whole life.
Yeah, that's great to hear. That's inspiring, Lexy. I mean, the worrying thing for me, you've mentioned there, obviously, the sort of soup diet, for example. The other side to it too is the health risk. Is that a fair shout, Professor, that some of these diets, not only that they could potentially be a health risk for people too?
To some extent, but it's really things like so-called fat binders or fat burners, which are supplements, and one, they're not evidence-based, and two, it's not always clear what's in them, that are more of a health risk. The big risk with things, fatty diets like cabbage soup, green tea, green coffee, vitamin water, is they're just not likely to work. And basically, any promise of miraculous weight loss is untrue. There is no magic way to lose weight without a sensible diet and regular exercise. No single product is going to get you to lose 4 stone in a week. Permanent weight loss requires long-term lifestyle changes. And so products that are promising lightning fast weight loss are not going to be good for your health, that's for sure. But they are most likely a scam, because core features of evidence-based weight management programs include dietary approaches that help you navigate towards a diet that is less full of calories, has got more nutritious foods, they are real foods, they form the basis of healthy habits, coupled with gradually increasing physical activity until it becomes part of your life, and using evidence-based behaviour change approaches. And critically, that is all bound together by social and emotional support that creates a community of care, understanding and empathy to help people get through, as Lex has just described, quite a long haul. Weight loss isn't a quick fix. It's a lifestyle change. And if you want to keep the weight off, you have to change your lifestyle.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, I can relate to what you're saying there as well, Lexy, where, I mean, how sustain. I mean, I've sort of tried, I'll hold my hands up, I've tried different things over the years, and it's just sustainable. You kind of think, well, how sustainable, are certain diets as well. It's just, for me anyway, it's sort of, impossible to sort of get through a week or just, through a lifetime. I dread to think I can only sort of, eat certain foods. So I think I sort of got to a similar place in terms of where you mentioned you are type thing, in terms of just sort of being sensible about things and exercising more. And I have, like you mentioned there, I make personally my own personal journey. I've sort of good weeks and certain weeks where I might not eat as well as I can. But you mentioned there the social support. How important is that for you, Lexy, having that sort of social network? We know social support is really important across a different areas in life. How insignificant has that been for you to have people who are sort of following a similar journey to yourself?
Massively significant. I think the first time I walked into my Swimming World group, it was the realisation that this wasn't just me, that I wasn't on my own with this, and it's almost like you're walking into a family. And you just mentioned there, some weeks you'll have bad weeks, and some weeks your life will get in the way. You won't be able to make the healthiest of choices, but you've always got your consultant, or you've always got your friends that you've made within group that will pick you up, keep you going, give you new ideas, sort of replenish that motivation, remind you how far you've come. And also all the learning that you do about why we need different foods, so I always believed that, carbohydrates were really fattening, and actually it was the understanding that the digestive biscuits were what was making me gain weight, that actually the potatoes, the pasta and the rice, I needed that for energy for my body. So it was, the whole package really was just an incredible experience, and why I then went on to become a Slimming World consultant, because I wanted to be able to help other people who had struggled with a lifelong battle in the same way that I had. And yeah, the support was second to none. I think if I hadn't have stayed for group, and I hadn't have met the people I'd met that massively inspired me as well, have supported me. I mean, I couldn't really cook when I joined Slimming World, and my consultant's wife taught me how to make spaghetti bolognese, and now I cook healthy meals for my children. My whole thinking around nutrition and everything has really changed because of it.
Yeah, that's a really interesting point you've made then. You mentioned the carbs there, and I mean, I sort of hold my hands up. I went on a non-carb thing a while back, and I just felt drained. I just, it wasn't a psychological thing. I just, tried to cut carbs completely and felt completely but you sort of sometimes go on the internet and you look at things, and people make sort of these compelling points, and it's easy to, and I'd like to think that I'm sort of, I'm not an expert, but I like to think that I can sort of, critically sort of look at things. But sometimes, the danger is that people can make a sort of compelling case on the internet, and you kind of follow it. And it's probably not a great idea to do that. So, I think that's the value of, sort of getting the evidence-based ideas. And in terms of your own self now, I mean, when you say you eat a balanced diet, what, just for our listeners, what would that be? Balanced diet. You mentioned you have carbs now. I mean, what would a balanced diet be? Just, I know everyone's different, but what would it be for you? Just an overview. How does that look like?
I think Slimming World taught me that skipping meals wasn't the answer. Yeah. So a balanced diet for me now is 3 meals a day. I'll have toast and eggs for breakfast with chopped tomatoes. I'll have a lovely stir fry for lunch, and then a proper evening meal. I do snack in between, but my snacks, if I'm hungry, my snacks have also changed. So I'm no longer snacking on biscuits and crisps. I will snack on healthier foods. So I might snack on some vegetables, or I might have a banana. So a balanced diet for me, but I also believe it's important for me, which is why I loved it, is that I've not ever cut out the biscuits and the crisps. I've just learned how to moderate them. And it's just changed my life, because that is sustainable. I think some of the fad diets are so seductive in their language of, we can help you lose 4 stone in a week, which is what you said before. But again, it's not something that you're going to be able to continue to do for life. Whereas this is something I do enjoy, the odd piece of cake. I do enjoy meals out, and Slimming World has taught me how to do that in a healthy way, which is why I've managed to maintain my 7 stone off for the last 5 years. It's just, it's been absolutely life-changing, and I think it's just balancing everything, both, physiologically, what does my body need, but also if I need a piece of cake, there's no guilt there. Though psychologically, the pickup is still there as well.
Absolutely. That's a great point. And not beating, yourself up. I mean, I think we've all been there before where, beating ourselves up. I've certainly done it before if I've had that sort of cake or, that sort of, if you want to call it a treat, depends on what people want to sort of call it. But just generally speaking, I think it's sort of, you want to get that sort of, moderation as well. There's certain things that people do enjoy, we do enjoy. Then I suppose, why not occasionally, that's for sure. But in terms of sort of information, Professor, I mean, I know it's hard to get information, but is there anything anyone listening in should take into consideration if it's too good to be true, it's too good to be true type thing?
Yeah, there are sources of trusted information. Something in terms of a weight loss approach is evidence-based if it is supported by what we call peer-reviewed research, ideally evidence from multiple trusted scientific sources, or it forms the basis of government policy recommendations, or you can find it on government or NHS websites. So if you go to the NHS Better Health website, it will point you in the direction of evidence-based approaches. If you want to understand more about Slimming World itself, you can go to slimmingworld.co.uk, where I think this story and a variety of other resources are also available.
Brilliant. Thanks for your time, Professor. It was really interesting and informative. And, Lexy, we wish you continued success on your journey. It sounds, it is an inspirational story, and it sounds like it's had a big impact, positive impact on your life. And, long may it continue. So thanks again for your time, and have a great day. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.